Everyone thought I'd end up as the guy who reset passwords and fixed office printers. Nobody imagined I'd build the system running their hospitals. My name is Grant Weber. I'm 39 years old. I was born and raised in Naperville, Illinois, where my dad is the top orthopedic surgeon at a private practice, and my mom used to tear through depositions like a shark in pearls. My older sister, Amanda, is the pride of the family. Cardiologist, Johns Hopkins graduate, perfect GPA, and a resume that reads like a med school admissions brochure. Me, I liked computers. And in our house, that was basically the same as saying I liked to fail creatively. Every dinner growing up felt like a report card. Amanda would talk about her latest internship or research project, and my parents would beam like she'd cured cancer over lunch. Then it would be my turn. I built a website that tracks lunch menus by student preference, I'd say. My mom would sip her wine and smile politely, like I'd announced I'd taken up finger painting. Dad would grunt, "You should learn Excel. That's something useful." Amanda would tilt her head. "Cute," she'd say, in that tone that meant the opposite. They called me the creative one, like it was a consolation prize. I got good grades, great ones even, but they didn't matter. Amanda always won. I stopped trying to keep up. While Amanda saved lives in theoretical clinical trials, I stayed up late teaching myself code, Java, C++, Python. I learned them all, not because I had a plan, but because writing logic made more sense to me than trying to impress people who only cared about white coats and six-figure degrees. My parents didn't hate me. They just didn't get me. I think in their eyes, I was someone with potential who hadn't figured out how to apply it correctly. And for a long time, I believed that too. So I didn't argue when they gently nudged me towards safe paths. "There's no shame in being in tech support," Dad once said. "They make decent money." Decent was the highest praise I ever got. So I stayed quiet. I listened. I didn't push back when they offered to connect me with a cousin's friend who ran an IT department at a call center. "Entry level, but solid," Dad said. I thanked him like I was grateful. Meanwhile, I was building the back-end architecture that would one day support one of the largest hospital networks in the Midwest. It wasn't about revenge. I didn't want to prove anything. I just didn't know how to stop. When I saw a broken system, I wanted to fix it. That's how it started. Just lines of code to make a chaotic thing make sense. Years passed. The lines of code turned into a real product. Then a company. Then a team. Then 2 pilot hospitals. But to my family, I was still the kid fixing Wi-Fi routers for his neighbors. They had no clue. Until Amanda got engaged to Claire, a smart, driven exec at Horizon Systems, one of the biggest players in health tech. We met at a dinner. She smiled politely and asked what I did. I told her I worked in software. Her eyes glazed over, the way people's do when they think they're talking to someone unimportant. Then a week later, she saw my name on a file her division was handling. Her company had just spent $200 million acquiring a platform. My platform. My name, Grant Weber, was right there at the top. Suddenly, I wasn't the invisible brother anymore. The first time I felt real pride in my work, I was 16. I'd just built a scheduling app for our high school fundraiser after the PTA president nearly had a meltdown trying to coordinate volunteers through email chains and sticky notes. I stayed up 3 nights straight building it. No template, no YouTube tutorials, just me, my laptop, and a spreadsheet of chaos I turned into something clean and clickable. The day we launched it, the principal gave me a shout out at the school assembly. Teachers high-fived me. Even a couple seniors I barely knew said it was sick. It was the first time I felt like I had done something important, something that helped real people. When I got home that afternoon, still buzzing, I dropped my backpack by the stairs and said, "They used my app today. The fundraiser's back on track." Mom was in the kitchen slicing apples. "That's nice, sweetie," she said without looking up. "Just make sure you're prepping for your SATs. Junior year is no joke." I nodded. I was used to it. Still, I left the trophy, a tiny little plaque from the school board, on the hallway table, hoping someone might notice. They didn't. Amanda had just gotten back from her pre-med summer program at Northwestern. She breezed into the house with a white coat in her duffel and stories about shadowing surgeons. Dad was riveted. He even poured wine that night, like we were celebrating something. Amanda talked about cardiac rhythms and surgical rotations. I sat there, the bowl of mashed potatoes cooling in front of me, trying to find the right time to say, I built something, too. But there never was a right time, not with Amanda around. A few weeks later came her college admission party. She had just been accepted early decision to Johns Hopkins. My parents rented a restaurant. There were balloons, speeches, even a slideshow of her baby pictures. Everyone came, cousins, neighbors, a few of her old teachers. I was expected to smile and pass around cupcakes like a proud little brother. What no one knew was that I was supposed to be somewhere else that day, the regional tech competition in Chicago. I had qualified 2 months earlier. It wasn't some random science fair. It was real industry people, real venture scouts, and I won. First place. Out of more than 100 students across the state, I came home with a glass trophy the size of a soda bottle and a small scholarship check with my name on it. The house was still full of leftover party decorations. No one had even noticed I was gone. When I walked in, Dad was watching TV. Where have you been? I held up the trophy. He squinted. Oh, what's that for? The tech comp. I won first. He nodded once. Cool. Put it with the others. There were no others. Not that anyone noticed. That night, I sat on my bed, trophy on my desk, scholarship check still folded in my pocket. And I realized something. I could keep chasing their applause, waiting for them to see me, or I could stop pretending I needed it. I didn't want Amanda's yardstick anymore. I didn't want to win at their game. I wanted my own track. It was the first time I really understood the gap between their world and mine. And I made peace with it. They saw wires and screens. I saw systems and solutions. They saw a hobby. I saw the beginning of something that would change everything. When I got to State College, I didn't have a master plan. I picked computer science because it felt right, safe, familiar. But the truth was I was still carrying that chip on my shoulder, the one that said I wasn't enough unless I proved it. That's where Eli came in. We met in a freshman data structures class. He was tall, sarcastic, and already pissed off at the world. He had a permanent scowl and a laptop covered in duct tape and weird stickers. First time we talked, he looked at my clean code and muttered, "You trying to impress the professor or build something real?" That was the beginning. We started working together in Eli's uncle's garage, a dusty, half-finished add-on behind a hardware store in Aurora. No heating, one extension cord, and a table that wobbled if you breathed too hard. It was perfect. We were both frustrated, not with school, but with how slow everything moved. We wanted to solve real problems, not just build apps that calculated Fibonacci numbers for extra credit. Eli's mom was a nurse at a small clinic. One night he told me how their internal messages kept getting lost in the system. Sometimes patient alerts were sent to the wrong floor. One time, a woman waited 3 extra hours for an urgent scan because her request sat unread in someone's inbox. "People are going to die," he said, staring at his screen because the fax machine jammed again. That stuck with me. So we started sketching. We mapped out an internal tool for healthcare staff, real-time alerts, status updates, automatic reminders. Nothing fancy at first, just a clean way to get the right message to the right person fast. We called it Relay. It wasn't groundbreaking, it wasn't revolutionary, but it worked. We funded it ourselves, did side gigs, built websites for local pizza shops, fixed computers for the campus admin office, took tutoring jobs we hated just to buy server time. By junior year, we had a working prototype. Eli's mom convinced her clinic to try it. 1 nurse used it, then 3, then the whole floor. It started catching errors before they became problems. Appointment gaps got filled. Staff started trusting it. We couldn't believe it. We printed business cards off a cheap online site and started emailing other clinics. Most ignored us. A few replied. One said yes. That's when I told my parents. They thought I was working IT support. Literally. Like plugging in monitors and installing antivirus software for the school district. When I explained we were piloting a communication system for a real hospital, Dad said, "Well, that's nice. Have you thought about getting a real job after graduation?" Then he offered to call a guy he knew at a call center who could get me into technical sales. Mom just smiled and said, "It's great to have a hobby while you're figuring things out." They weren't being cruel. That was just their default setting. Polite skepticism wrapped in concern. The idea that I might actually be building something valuable didn't register. They didn't ask what the app did. They didn't ask why hospitals were using it. They asked if I was getting paid. I said no. Dad nodded. Well, it's time to start thinking long term. What I didn't tell him was that Relay had already saved one small hospital in northern Illinois thousands of dollars in staffing costs, that their new nursing director had called us directly asking if we'd consider expanding the system, that she introduced us to someone who changed everything, a doctor named Marla Connors. Marla got it immediately. She wasn't impressed by the code or the interface. She was impressed by the results. She saw how Relay could scale. She brought us into real conversations with hospital boards, not just small clinics. She became our champion. She even gave us our first real seed grant, not from a VC, but from a healthcare innovation fund. That's when Eli looked at me and said, "Dude, this is real now." He was right. It was still just the two of us in a garage with no AC and a stolen Wi-Fi signal. But we had a product. We had a mission. We had traction. And we had something even better: belief. Not from our families, not from professors, but from the people who mattered most, the ones who needed it, the ones we built it for. We incorporated Relay the summer after graduation, just a two-person team with a half-broken coffee machine and enough caffeine in our bloodstreams to cause medical concern. We turned down our first acquisition offer 6 months later. A small firm dangled 7 figures in front of us, and for a minute, I thought maybe we should take it. Get our win, go live in peace. But Eli laughed. If they're offering 7 now, it means we're worth 20 later. He wasn't wrong. By the time I turned 28, we had 35 employees and 2 major hospital networks on board. Not clinics, not pilots, full-on contracts. We were hiring, scaling, building dashboards for administrators, encrypted threads for specialists, even integrations with EHR systems. All the stuff we used to dream about while scraping frost off the inside of Eli's garage. We had a real office, real payroll, real problems. But I didn't care. I was in it. Except when I went home. In Naperville, I still drove the same rust-red Corolla I'd bought for $3,200 in college, wore the same hoodies, ate the same microwave burritos when I stayed too long at Mom and Dad's house, and missed dinner. They still thought I was in software. Still offered to put in a good word at some medical IT company that serviced their hospital. Once, Dad actually pulled out a brochure from a conference and pointed at a tech sponsor logo. "These guys are sharp," he said. "Might be worth getting in touch." It was our logo. I didn't say anything, just nodded and said I'd look into it. Eli used to ask why I kept them in the dark. Why not just tell them, show them what you've built? I didn't have a great answer. Part of it was habit. Part of it was fear. And part of it, the biggest part, was peace. Because the minute I said something, the dynamics would change. The questions would start, the expectations, the passive-aggressive comparisons. I'd go from being invisible to being dissected. So I stayed silent. The tech blogs started calling me the ghost founder. They thought it was some cool branding thing, like I was mysterious, strategic. Truth is, I just didn't want to deal with the fallout of recognition in the one place it mattered most. Home. Every holiday, it was the same. Amanda would talk about her research, her grants, the hospital's latest robotic surgery milestone. Mom would glow. Dad would nod approvingly. Then it would be my turn. I'm still doing software, I'd say, cutting my turkey. Mostly healthcare stuff now. "That's nice," Mom would say, reaching for the gravy. "You know, you should talk to Amanda. Her hospital just hired a new tech team. They might need help." Help. Like I was still rebooting routers and resetting passwords. I smiled through it. I always did. What they didn't know was that a few months earlier, a VC firm had valued our company at $120 million after our latest funding round. The paperwork had my name all over it. I had 3 attorneys and an accountant who treated my signature like gold. But to my family, I was still the backup kid, the one they didn't have to worry about. I didn't correct them, not once. I figured if they didn't see it by now, they probably never would. And that was fine. I wasn't doing this for their applause anymore. I'd built something real, something that mattered. And if the price of peace was invisibility, then so be it. Amanda got engaged to a woman named Claire Sullivan. She worked in health tech, of course, and Mom practically threw a parade the minute she found out Claire had an MBA from Kellogg and a title with the word executive in it. Strategic Mergers Director, Horizon Systems. Big name, Big job, big deal. Mom started planning the engagement dinner the way some people plan diplomatic summits: assigned seating, cocktail attire, subtle pressure to dress properly, like I was showing up for an interview, not dinner with my own family. You should wear a blazer, she said over the phone. Claire's family will be there. She works with very high level people. I bit my tongue. I'll dress fine, Mom. She hesitated. It's just, you want to look like you're doing well. I am doing well. Pause. Well, then show it. That was Mom's version of encouragement. I Googled Claire that night, just out of curiosity. Up came her polished LinkedIn page, headshot with a soft focus background, blazer sharp as a scalpel, and the Horizon Systems logo stamped proudly underneath. Director of Strategic Mergers, Health Tech Division, Horizon. The name made my stomach flip. Horizon was the company that had been in talks to acquire us for nearly a year. They'd approached through a third-party firm first, made a tentative offer, then pulled back for more due diligence. We'd gone through rounds of negotiations. It was slow and calculated, classic corporate dance, but it was serious. Their latest offer? North of $200 million. I stared at Claire's page again. There was no mistaking it. She was part of the team that had been trying to buy my company, and she had no idea who I was. At first, it was almost funny, like one of those cheesy movie setups where the characters don't realize they're in each other's orbit. But then it hit me. I was walking into a dinner where the woman sitting across from me wasn't just Amanda's fiancée. She was my counterpart in a deal that could reshape everything I'd built, and she thought I was just Amanda's brother, the underachieving one. I didn't say anything to Eli. Not yet. I needed to be sure. I checked the email thread from our lawyer. Still waiting on Horizon's final term sheet. Their internal team is reviewing IP clauses. That lined up with Claire's title. We were in negotiations with my future sister-in-law. I didn't know whether to laugh or run. The night of the engagement dinner, I showed up in a button-down and sport coat. No tie. Just enough polish to pass Mom's inspection. Not enough to suggest I was trying too hard. The restaurant was one of those French fusion places with gold lighting and velvet chairs. 3 courses, 3 wine pairings, and 0 room for error. I got seated near the end of the table. Amanda, Claire, and Claire's parents were dead center, the important seats. Mom fluttered between them like an event coordinator. Dad nodded politely, sipping wine and making occasional noises. I kept quiet, just listened. Claire talked shop at one point. We're deep in a big deal right now, she said. Tech acquisition, long process, healthcare software. Amanda leaned in. Oh, that sounds like your world, Grant. Claire smiled vaguely. Oh yeah? What do you do? I opened my mouth, then stopped. For a second, I considered telling her. Just dropping it right there. We've been emailing, actually. I'm the guy you've been negotiating with. But I didn't. I just smiled. Software stuff, mostly back-end systems, hospitals. Claire nodded, distracted. Sounds intense. She had no clue, and I wasn't planning to tell her. Not yet. The real reveal? That was coming, and no one at that table was ready for it. The dinner was at the Chateau, a place with chandeliers the size of my first apartment and waiters who folded your napkin every time you got up. Velvet chairs, soft jazz playing from somewhere you couldn't locate, and a menu that didn't have prices. Just confidence. Mom had outdone herself. Claire's parents arrived right on time, all pearls and tailored suits. Amanda was glowing, seated dead center next to Claire like they were royalty. I was down the table with the safe guests, cousins, a couple of Amanda's high school friends, and a guy no one could remember the name of. I was halfway through the duck when it happened. Claire was in the middle of a story about an intense acquisition she was leading, her fork cutting through a bit of risotto. When she paused, she squinted across the table. Right at me. Wait a second, she said, pointing slightly, eyes narrowing. Grant Weber? The clinking of forks stopped. Chairs shifted. Every conversation died mid-sentence. Amanda blinked, her fork frozen in midair. Mom's smile tightened. Dad looked up, confused, like someone had just turned off the background music. Claire tilted her head. You're Grant Weber. I didn't say a word, just held her gaze, calm, letting the silence thicken. She let out a slow exhale like something had just clicked. Oh my God, she said, her voice suddenly louder. You're that Grant Weber from Relay. We've been negotiating with you for 8 months. Amanda dropped her fork. It hit the plate with a sharp clatter. Claire turned to her. Amanda, your brother is the founder of the company we've been trying to acquire. Amanda looked like someone had slapped her. Wait, what? My mom stared at me like she was seeing a ghost. What is she talking about? I still hadn't said a word. Claire leaned back in her chair, stunned. You built Relay? The entire health tech platform? I nodded slowly. We thought your name was just a coincidence, she said, half to herself. I didn't even think to connect the dots. Amanda's mouth opened and closed. But you never said. Mom recovered first. Claire, are you sure? Our grant works with software, yes, but... Claire laughed, a little breathless. Yes, I'm sure. I've seen his name on NDAs, contracts, product specs. I've presented his slides to our CEO. My dad finally spoke. You mean our grant? Claire blinked at him. He's the sole founder. You're trying to buy his company for $200 million. The table went quiet again. I finally set my wine glass down and said, evenly, 215 actually. Your latest offer came in last Friday. The look on Amanda's face was something I'll never forget, like the air had been sucked out of her lungs. Claire just stared. Why didn't you say anything? I shrugged. No one ever asked. Mom looked at me like she didn't know whether to be proud or offended. All this time, and you didn't tell us? I didn't think you'd be interested, I said, my voice calm. You always thought I was between jobs. Amanda whispered. You built that? Yes. Claire leaned forward, her expression a mix of admiration and confusion. You realize this changes everything, right? Does it? I asked. Everyone was still staring. I looked down the table at my parents, Amanda, the carefully arranged wine glasses, the curated music, the whole picture-perfect scene they'd constructed. I saw it for what it was, the stage they'd built to show off Amanda's life, and I just flipped the script. Claire sat back slowly. I'm going to need a moment to process this. Amanda blinked again, still shell-shocked. I took a sip of wine. The silence wrapped around the table like velvet. I hadn't said a word until now, but the silence, it said everything. The next morning, my phone lit up like it had been set on fire. First, Mom, then Dad, then Amanda. 3 missed calls before I even got out of bed. By 9 a.m., Amanda was in the lobby of our office building. No warning, no text. She just showed up. Can we talk? She asked, her voice a little too casual, like we hadn't just detonated the family dynamic at a dinner table the night before. We ended up at brunch. Same hotel we always went to for family celebrations. Marble floors, floral centerpieces, waiters in matching ties. But this time, I picked the table, and I sat across from them like I was leading a board meeting, not a family reunion. Mom stirred her tea for way too long before speaking. Sweetheart, I wish you had told us. We had no idea. That's kind of the point, I said. Dad cleared his throat. We're proud of you, son. Really. It's impressive. Impressive. The word landed flat, like a compliment printed off a template. Amanda sat quietly, hands folded in her lap. I'd never seen her so still. I leaned forward. Let's talk about that. About the compliments I never got, about the years I spent explaining myself, shrinking myself, while you all nodded politely and changed the subject. Mom blinked. That's not fair. No, I said, calm but sharp. What's not fair is being told my work was a nice hobby while I was building the platform that now supports your hospital's operations. Amanda looked down at her coffee. I kept going. You know how many dinners I sat through pretending to be interested in whatever latest accolade Amanda got, while you all smiled and nodded like I wasn't even there? Grant, let me finish. Mom sat back. You offered to help me find jobs I didn't need. You pitied me for not going to med school. You told people I was figuring it out, even when I was signing deals with hospital systems you work in. I turned to Amanda. And you knew how hard I worked. You knew how serious I was, but you never once asked, not once, because it was easier to let me stay in the background. She looked up and for once didn't have a comeback. You're right, she said, voice low. I liked being the golden child. I didn't want to share the spotlight. That landed like a punch, not because it hurt, but because it was honest. I wasn't angry, I said. Not really. I was just tired of pretending, tired of being polite so you wouldn't feel uncomfortable about ignoring me. Mom's eyes glistened. We didn't mean to ignore you. But you did, I said. Silence. The waiter came by, asked if we were ready to order. No one answered. I exhaled and sat back. I'm not here to punish you. I'm not cutting you off or making some dramatic exit, Mrs. Fry, but I'm done playing the role you assigned me. Dad nodded slowly. We underestimated you. No, I said. You misjudged me, over and over. And now that you know who I am, really know, don't rewrite history to make it feel better. Amanda reached for her glass of water. What happens now? I thought about it. I don't know, I said honestly. But I'm not chasing your approval anymore. I spent years earning your respect in silence. Now it's your turn to earn mine. None of them said anything. And for once, the silence didn't feel like rejection. It felt like the start of something real. Not perfect, not fixed, but finally honest. 3 days later, Amanda showed up at my apartment with a box of cupcakes and a bottle of wine. No heads up, no family group text, just her at the door, looking unsure for the first time in her life. I didn't know if you'd want to talk, she said, holding the box like it might explode. But I figured I owed you dessert either way. I stepped aside. If there's red velvet in there, you're forgiven for most things. She laughed. It was real. No tension, no performance. We sat on the couch, cupcakes between us, wine poured, no script. I've been thinking, she said, unwrapping a vanilla one slowly, about how much I didn't see, or maybe didn't want to. I sipped my wine, quiet. I made it about competition, she continued, about being the one everyone was proud of, and when you started doing something that didn't fit the mold, I tuned it out. She looked at me. That wasn't fair. I didn't say anything. Just let her talk. I was jealous, she admitted, not of what you built, but of how you were able to do it without needing anyone's applause. I couldn't have done that. That surprised me. Amanda had always seemed allergic to vulnerability, but here she was, peeling back years of armor one sentence at a time. You were always so calm about it, she said. While I was collecting trophies and chasing promotions, you were building something real. I shrugged. Trophies look good on shelves. I wanted something that worked. She smiled. Yeah, and now it does. Claire can't stop talking about Relay, by the way. She's still mad? Mad? No. Impressed? Very. Intimidated? Just a little. I raised an eyebrow. Really? She said, and I quote, "Why didn't you tell me your brother was a tech genius hiding in plain sight?" I chuckled. I like hiding in plain sight. Sounds cooler than ignored. Amanda winced. Okay, fair, deserved. We fell quiet for a second. It wasn't awkward. It was comfortable. Then she said something I didn't expect. I've got a few pilot programs coming up at my hospital. Tech integration, care team communication tools, stuff like that. I could bring Relay in. I looked at her. You're not just saying that to patch things up? Nope, she said, matter of fact. I'm saying it because I want the best tools in the building, and because I trust you. It took me a second to respond. Thanks. She reached for another cupcake. And before you ask, I'll be treating you like any other vendor. No favoritism, no family discounts. That's a relief. I only give those to people who remember my birthday. She rolled her eyes, grinning. We spent the rest of the night talking like we hadn't in years, about hospitals, about tech, about how Claire's company was still trying to sweeten their offer. And for the first time, it didn't feel like I was trying to impress Amanda, and she wasn't trying to win anything. We were just two grown-ups who finally saw each other clearly. Siblings, equals, maybe even allies. The acquisition closed 6 weeks later. Final deal, $215 million. The ink dried. The lawyers got paid. And for the first time, my name wasn't hidden behind NDAs or legal shells. It was right there, in the press release, in the investor packet, on the internal company bulletin. Grant Weber, founder of Relay Health Systems. Claire called me the morning the announcement went live. You're officially part of Horizon now, she said, voice light. Still planning to wear hoodies to the board meetings? Only the black ones, I said. You know, to keep it classy. She laughed. Good, and congrats, Grant, I mean that. I stayed on as head of innovation, still led my dev team, still did my 2 a.m. debugging sessions with Eli, now with better funding and better chairs. But the biggest shift wasn't in the office. It was at dinner. Family dinners were different, quieter, no more resume contests, no more backhanded compliments, just conversation. Amanda asked real questions now, wanted to know how we were integrating with her hospital system. She'd email me white papers, invite me to strategy calls. We disagreed sometimes, fiercely even, but it felt like arguing with a colleague, not a sibling trying to one-up me. And Mom Mom listened more. She still offered unsolicited advice that would never change. But she asked first. She didn't talk over me. She even started referring to me as my son in tech, like it was a badge of honor. Dad surprised me most. He started asking about the system, not to challenge me, just to understand. He said, "Your software saved our surgery team an hour a day on coordination." It was the first time he'd ever called it your software. Claire helped too. She was the quiet bridge. When conversations stalled or drifted toward old dynamics, she'd gently steer it back. "Hey," she'd say, smiling, "I want to hear more about Grant's rollout update." And just like that, the floor was mine. They never apologized directly. Not really. But the way they acted changed. And that was enough. I didn't need the big speech or the overdue tears, because I wasn't looking for recognition anymore. I had already found something better. Peace. Respect. And the kind of quiet that comes after years of noise, not because things went unsaid, but because finally everything that needed to be said had been. The kid with too many hobbies had grown up, and now he was shaping the system his whole family worked in.